You ever have one of those neighbors who make you wonder if you've unknowingly stepped into a bad reality show? Yeah, that's Rhonda Glass, the self-declared queen of Willowbrook Court. The kind of woman who thinks HOA president is a higher rank than mayor and wields her clipboard like it's the Constitution. She had a golden nameplate, a custom parking spot at the clubhouse, and a tendency to peer through blinds like a hawk tracking prey. Unfortunately for me, her prey was my mailbox. Now, before you assume this is some kind of exaggerated suburban spat, let me take you back to the beginning. My grandparents bought this house in the 70s. Back before there was an HOA, back when neighbors helped each other instead of filing violation notices for garden gnomes. After they passed, I moved in, not just to honor their memory, but because this house was home. I wanted peace, quiet, and maybe a little dirt under my nails from rebuilding the memorial garden they planted. Enter Rhonda, stage left, driving a white Escalade that was 2 sizes too large for both the street and her personality. She'd been HOA president for 5 years running, and from what I heard, she had a rule book thicker than the Bible and half the compassion. The kind of person who thinks power is best expressed through pettiness. I first met her on a Tuesday. She pulled up as I was replacing a few warped planks on the porch. "You're going to need a permit for that," she barked from her window. "I'm just replacing some boards," I replied, not even looking up. "That's structural modification under Section 4C. She snapped, tossing a trifold pamphlet onto my lawn. "You're officially on notice." And that was just the beginning. First came the letters. Then the fines. Then the veiled threats about escalating things if I didn't comply with community standards. Apparently, my porch was too rustic, my grass too wild, and my trash bins too visible. But the real battle began with the mailbox. See, my original mailbox was this old iron thing my grandfather had welded himself. It had stood for decades, bent in a few places, but solid. Rhonda hated it. Claimed it didn't match the approved aesthetic of the neighborhood. "You'll need to replace that eyesore," she informed me during one of her unsolicited visits. "It's not compliant with Article 6B. I asked her to show me the rule. She told me to check the HOA website, which conveniently had been under maintenance for 3 months. I didn't budge. That's when the accident started. The first time, I thought maybe it was a delivery truck. The second time, maybe a distracted driver. But by the third time my mailbox had been flattened like a pancake, I noticed the same tire marks. Wide ones. SUV style. Rhonda style. I set up a cheap motion sensor camera from my shed and waited. Sure enough, 2 days later, I caught her on video. Driving slowly past my property, swerving sharply, and smashing her bumper into my mailbox like it owed her money. Then she just drove off. No shame, no hesitation. I filed a police report. The officer raised an eyebrow but said unless I had footage of her behind the wheel at the moment of impact, there wasn't much they could do. That's when I decided to get creative. "You want to play games, Rhonda? Fine. Let's play." The next week, I built a new mailbox. But this one wasn't like the others. It looked normal from the outside, sleek, clean, HOA approved in every visible way. But underneath the aluminum casing was a core of concrete reinforced with rebar, anchored 3 feet into the ground with poured cement. The kind of engineering you usually reserve for storm shelters and bank vaults. I even took inspiration from highway bollards, those steel posts designed to stop trucks that I called it, the fortress. But I wasn't ready to unveil it just yet. I needed her to walk into the trap on her own. And for that, I had to wait. So, I let her destroy one more mailbox. Cheap wood. Easily replaceable. Made a big show of installing it. She destroyed it within 3 days. Perfect. I installed the fortress that Friday evening. Buried deep, aligned perfectly. Even painted it the same dull black as the others to avoid suspicion. I even added a little decorative flag just to sell the illusion. Then I waited. Days passed. A week. Then 2. I started to think she might have gotten cold feet. Or maybe someone tipped her off. Then came the smug note on my door. Your mailbox seems more compliant now. Good to see you're finally learning. Ah, there it was. Arrogance. The belief that she'd won. But I knew better. I didn't have to wait much longer. Sunday night, 11:47 p.m. The trap was set. Everything was in place. The cameras. The motion sensors. Even Betty from across the street, Rhonda's longtime rival, had her phone ready, live streaming for her growing band of HOA-hating followers. 5:58 a.m. Monday. That's when it happened. I stood by my window, sipping my coffee, phone recording in my other hand. The street was silent, the sky just starting to blush with the sunrise. Betty was across the street, phone mounted to a tripod, already narrating in a stage whisper like she was hosting a true crime podcast. Then the sound. The unmistakable growl of Rhonda's SUV. She came into view like a shark cruising in familiar waters. Slowed a bit. Lined up the shot with her usual precision. Then accelerated. Hard. She was going 25 miles per hour easy. Maybe more. And then it happened. The moment her Escalade met the fortress, the sound was divine. Metal groaned, glass exploded, and the SUV crumpled like an aluminum can under a boot. Her car folded around that mailbox like it had just tried to tackle a parking bollard. The front end was instantly obliterated, hood bent upward, radiator steaming like a dying dragon, airbags punching out with a thud that echoed across the street. She sat there, motionless. Hair wild, airbag in her face, mascara probably somewhere around her ears. Through her shattered windshield, she stared at the unblemished mailbox like it had personally betrayed her. It didn't even have a scratch. I stepped outside slowly, camera still rolling. Morning, I said cheerfully, as if I'd just stepped out for the paper. Everything okay? Betty's voice came from across the street, broadcast to a dozen people and growing. Justice has a name, she whispered, and it's concrete reinforced mailboxes. Neighbors started trickling out, phones in hand, capturing every glorious second. Rhonda tried to speak, but the only thing that came out was a raspy whisper of disbelief. This mailbox is illegal. You set me up. Actually, I replied. It's 100% to code. Reinforced steel posts, approved dimensions, even painted HOA black. Just a really solid installation. She tried to step out of the car, stumbled, caught herself on the bent frame of her door. You can't film me! She shrieked suddenly, spinning to face every camera in range. This is harassment. I'll sue every last one of you. Betty zoomed in. Smile for the internet, Rhonda. You're live. Now I know what you're thinking. This is where the story ends, right? Rhonda gets publicly humiliated, her car's front end is ruined, and the entire neighborhood witnesses her glorious downfall. Story over. Not even close. See, Rhonda wasn't the type to go quietly into that HOA-mandated goodnight. No, she was the kind of petty that metastasized. The kind who, after wrecking her own Escalade on a mailbox she'd intentionally targeted, would somehow still blame you. And that's exactly what she did. Later that day, after her car got towed, a process which involved 2 tow trucks and a whole lot of angry muttering, I got a visit. Not from her, but from Officer Delgado, the same cop I'd reported the previous mailbox incidents to. A good guy, but he looked tired, like Rhonda had been breathing down his neck all morning. Hey, he said, looking at my mailbox like it was some sort of modern art exhibit. Mind if we talk? Sure, I replied, already knowing what was coming. She claims you built a dangerous obstruction intentionally, he said, flipping open a notepad. Says it was meant to cause harm to passing vehicles. Funny, I said, walking him over to the base. You'll find it's built exactly to the USPS specs. Anchored properly, no spikes, no concrete above ground, nothing that violates code. He crouched down, examined the base. You poured this yourself? Yup. And you have footage of her hitting it intentionally? Multiple angles, I said, handing him a flash drive. He raised an eyebrow. I assume Betty gave you a copy too? She live-streamed it. Delgado sighed, tucking the flash drive into his jacket. Yeah, this probably isn't going the way she hoped. But that didn't stop her from trying. The next day, I got an official HOA violation letter. Unauthorized construction. It read. Violation of curbside uniformity standards. It came with a $500 fine and a demand to remove the mailbox within 48 hours. Because here's the thing, I'd already requested approval for the mailbox 3 weeks ago. I'd submitted the design, the materials, everything. And Rhonda? She'd rejected it without reading it. But I had proof, a certified mail receipt showing the HOA board received the request, and video of her tossing it in the trash unopened. I appealed the violation immediately. Sent copies of everything, including the footage of her destroying my old mailbox, the live stream, and the police report. I CC'd the entire HOA board. And guess what? For the first time in Willowbrook history, the board overruled the president. 3 days later, Rhonda was forced to rescind the violation notice and publicly acknowledge that my mailbox was not only legal, it was exemplary. Her exact words, read aloud at the monthly HOA meeting? After reviewing submitted documentation, we have determined that Mr. Mason's mailbox adheres to all HOA and city standards. I swear she nearly choked on the word determined. But it didn't stop there. Oh no. That mailbox became a symbol. Betty made t-shirts. The Fortress, they read, with a picture of a crumpled Escalade and a tiny, proud mailbox standing tall. Half the neighborhood bought one. Some neighbors started reinforcing their own mailboxes, adding little touches of flair that previously would have earned them an instant fine. Gnome-shaped post caps. Brick bases. Even solar lights. Suddenly, Rhonda's rigid control of the block started cracking. Then came the petitions. First, one to change the bylaws around mailbox materials. It passed unanimously. Then another, more dangerous one, a motion to hold a vote of no confidence in the HOA president. It needed 40% of the neighborhood to sign in order to be heard at the next meeting. It got 62%. Rhonda tried to block the motion. Claimed it was procedurally invalid, subversive, and my favorite, the result of internet trolling and harassment. But the board had tasted freedom, and her iron grip had weakened. The night of the vote, the clubhouse was packed. People who hadn't shown up to an HOA meeting in years were suddenly front row with popcorn. Betty streamed it live, again. Rhonda made one last desperate speech. I have served this community with honor, she said, voice shaking. I have enforced the rules fairly and consistently. Someone in the back coughed. Except when you used your SUV as a wrecking ball. Laughter rippled across the room. Rhonda tried to regain control. This isn't a popularity contest. It's about order and standards, Anne. A neighbor interrupted. It's about you, Rhonda. And we're tired. The vote passed. 45-3. Rhonda was removed from her position effective immediately. She stormed out of the meeting, heels clicking like gunshots against the tile, face redder than a sunburned tomato. Betty, ever the documentarian, narrated her exit like it was the season finale of a prestige drama. And just like that, the reign of Rhonda was over. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood changed. Not overnight, but slowly, like fog lifting. People planted what they wanted in their yards. Kids chalked up the sidewalks without fear of fines. There were cookouts again. Laughter. Freedom. And that mailbox? It stood tall. Untouched. A monument to standing your ground, literally. One afternoon, about a month after the vote, I was working in the garden when a car pulled up. Not Rhonda's, a rental. But I recognized her as she stepped out, dressed in muted gray, makeup carefully applied, but her usual bravado nowhere in sight. She stood there for a long moment, just looking at the mailbox. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Finally, she spoke. I lost my insurance over that crash, she said softly. Premiums doubled. HOA board's threatening to sue me for misuse of funds. I didn't reply. She looked at me, for once, not with anger, but something that almost looked like humility. I went too far," she said. Still, I stayed silent. After a beat, she nodded to herself and got back in the car. No threats. No speeches. Just a quiet retreat. And that, more than the vote, felt like closure. Now, whenever someone drives by and sees the fortress, they ask about the story. I tell them the short version. HOA tried to bully me, so I built a mailbox that bullied back. But those who stick around hear the full tale. Of Rhonda. Of the HOA power trip. Of a quiet street that stood up for itself. And every once in a while, I'll catch a glimpse of someone slowing down as they pass my property, not to destroy something, but to admire it. Because in a world full of Rhondas, sometimes all you need is a concrete mailbox and a little backbone. And maybe a neighbor like Betty.